Call the Select Board meeting to order Monday, January 13th. Michelle Pryor, joined by Vice Chair John Fallon, Member Anthea Brady, Bill McGonigal, Mike Betancourt, and Town Manager Beth Rudolph. We're going to go through, tonight we have a public hearing on traffic. We have some appointments and a bunch of other things on the agenda. So we're going to jump right in to acceptance of donations, the Town Manager's report, and then we'll move along. So thank you, John.
All right. I move that we accept with gratitude a donation of $27,440 from the EEC stabilization grant of $27,000. Yeah, thank you. $440 of the Recreation Department Kid Connection RAP EEC Child Care license for the months of December 2024 and January 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Just got a lot of reverb. I feel like
Yeah, a lot of hot mics.
I know. goes to 11.
I move that we accept with gratitude a grant of $425 from the Winchester Cultural Council to the Kid Connection Preschool to support the Children's Author and Illustrator Month curriculum.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I move that we accept with gratitude a donation of $200 from the VFW Aboriginal Post number 3719 to the Police Department, and thanks for participation in Veterans Day observance to be deposited in the police gift account.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Beth.
Thank you. A few updates on items that are not otherwise on the board's agenda this evening. First up, I wanted to mention that the town, as folks may know, is a member of Wind Power, which is an electricity aggregate program that we participate in, and residents have the ability to choose wind power as their energy supply. And for the first time since the town has been part of the energy aggregation program, the Eversource rates are the Eversource basic rates are slightly less expensive than our wind power standard. So over the course of a 6-month period from February through July, the wind power program would cost residents on average about additional $6 per month. So residents have the ability to opt out of the wind power program, and the information regarding that is on the town's website if you're interested in doing that. And we'll have some additional information and background information from our sustainability director that we'll post up there. And then Eversource adjusts their rates every 6 months, so we will reevaluate the Eversource versus wind power rates once those new rates are published later this summer. A couple updates on the Winchester Center MBTA construction project. Tomorrow, I just want to make everybody aware the rotary is going to be closed. It's going to be closed to through traffic. Vehicles can come either down Main Street or up Mount Vernon Street and head towards Church Street, but you won't be able to come underneath the rotary back towards Mount Vernon Street. That closure will happen between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. tomorrow. Additionally, the MBTA is holding a public meeting to review progress on their construction project, similar to the update they provided to the board in December. That meeting will be held virtually on January 22nd at 6 p.m. There's additional information on the town's website about how you can register for that program. I just wanted to highlight from the town clerk's office that nomination process for public office is currently underway. Anyone interested has until January 29th to obtain nomination papers. Papers must be returned on January 31st to the clerk's office, and then the town's annual election will be held on Saturday, March 22nd in the high school gym. Also, we are working through the appointment process for the WCCP, which is the committee that has been formed to implement the CPA. So there are several appointments that were made by the select board. We expect to have those interviews for the board on your next meeting on January 27th. And there's actually 2 openings that are currently posted on the town's website. One is for the at-large member who does not hold elected or appointed office to be appointed by the select board, and the other is for the at-large member to be appointed by the finance committee. So we hope that anyone who's interested in that would be willing to apply. Next up, the town has recently opened bids for our recycling program. So we are expecting to award a 3-year contract for FY26 through FY28. The town received 4 bids. 2 were for fixed rate pricing and 2 were for variable rates. Staff intends to award the contract to Win Waste for a fixed price of $105 per ton for all 3 years. They're holding their price constant for 3 years to continue with our single stream recycling policy. Win Waste did propose a slightly reduced rate if we were to separate out glass from the recycling stream completely. We do have some concerns on the staff side that we wouldn't be able to get enough compliance with that to have it be cost effective. The one thing that we are looking to implement starting in the new fiscal year is that Win Waste has agreed to recycle cardboard at no cost. So they will, if we separate out cardboard boxes, they will take that and recycle it at no cost to the town. So our intention is to set up a separate station where people can recycle their cardboard outside of the single stream recycling. It will not change our per ton overall rate, but it will reduce the tonnage that we are disposing of. So unless I hear anything from the board, that's the direction that we're going to be headed after this meeting.
What's the issue with the glass?
So I think if there's any contamination, right? So if we have to basically get 100% compliance to be able to get the reduced rate. And so if there's any contamination, then we're going to be paying $105 per ton regardless. And I think there was some concern from the staff's perspective that we want to encourage people to recycle in total, and that asking people to separate glass, given that we've been a single stream community for so long, could be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. I mean, we used to, it wasn't that long, but I mean, we used to separate the glass, and if there's savings there and efficiencies, especially on the recycling side, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily not evaluate that path as well for us.
Was there significant savings, Beth?
So I think it was a $95 per ton versus the $105 per ton.
There was a lot of research when people started transitioning to single stream that single stream really encouraged recycling. So it's also like that's a balance with our recycling costs versus the waste costs. If we're asking people to separate and it's too much work or too much effort to do, they're going to throw it in the trash, and then we're charged for that rate instead.
Yeah. What are our rates between we're required anyways by state law to recycle, right? Everybody is. So, and we're one of the highest, I think, tonnage in the state, right? For overall volume. Mm-hmm. So, anything that we could do to encourage, actual recycling, not just single stream. Because, as it turns out, even a lot of, I would say the majority of the single stream recycling just goes into the incinerator and is not recycled. So that's kind of a also recent development, and it's an unfortunate one, but it kind of undermines the whole strategic policy objective.
Yeah, I think pulling out cardboard, I think will be fairly easy for people to do. I know myself, it's a big bulky item, right, that you can bring to and it's a little bit easier for staff to be able to manage that to ensure that only cardboard is being placed in that cardboard only recycle bin as opposed to the glass, which is a little bit harder to make sure that 100% of the glass is coming out of the recycling stream. So I think that's why we're headed in that direction.
Yeah. I've seen this before with a client where making sure the glass and sometimes plastic was compliant with everything in terms of being clean was a huge money suck for a while.
Right.
And so it just, to the best of good intentions, you just can't do it sometimes.
Well, we did it, for a long time. So, it's just, we had a giant bin and you threw your glass in there and that was it. And it was recycled and at that point, because I think we did have significant, not necessarily savings, but efficiencies, I think, with that. So, and it wasn't, I didn't think it was managed necessarily. I don't remember seeing somebody there kind of managing that process. It was just...
So we could, it's a 3-year contract, Beth?
Yep.
So we could start with cardboard.
Yep.
See how we do. And then in theory, if these same vendors are in the space, see if glass is a different efficiency. Maybe we could sequence it that way. Go with as proposed. We save what cardboard that doesn't go on the actual belt. And then if we, because you're right, Mike, we did have bins for everything. So if we're back to some bins, maybe we can get savings on two sides. But-
Yeah, and I think that, part of that is we were doing it in conjunction with the SMART program. So
Yes.
that, which had encouraged people, obviously, to
Yes.
recycle, because then it would cost them more to not recycle those
Correct.
items. So as we're looking at moving towards
Pay-as-you-throw.
pay-as-you-throw, it seems like these are the incremental steps to return to that, which residents have been requesting.
Yes.
So, not all of them, but some of them certainly.
Okay. So are we good with the direction as proposed by the town manager?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And on the pay-as-you-throw, where are we with that evaluation?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, we had kind of put the brakes on that when we got our recycling rates right now are higher than our disposal rates for solid waste. So I think the financial analysis, kind of where we left off, was that from a resident financial sense, it was going to be a little challenging to make the permit and the bag fee a reasonable amount. And we can certainly go back and reevaluate that.
Yeah,
if we'd
I
like.
think we should evaluate that again, I think.
Yep. I think we can resurrect that transfer station working group if
Yep.
need be, but I think
Let's
it
do
was,
it.
we had to have these prices come in. If there's a way to take food waste out of the stream, there's probably more savings, but I think we're in a position to make some different choices. Sorry, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
was just going to say, our sticker price, virtual sticker price, has gone up so much in the past few years that I think it's great if we can look at what a pay-as-you-throw option would look like and what it might cost. But, it's also still, it's not going to be sort of the significant feeling of savings you had before.
6-8 years ago.
Given how high the transfer station costs have increased. Anything that we can sort of look at in terms of reducing waste, and we were talking about composting before and things like that. But it seems it might not be as,
There used to be a much greater difference between the
yeah.
recycling and the solid waste costs, and now they're basically even.
Yep.
Yeah, they've been somewhat, even for a little while now. And, even during our evaluation and the pay-as-you-throw in the working group. So it's good that we start that up again, and happy to help out with that. I think we should also look maybe at, while we are in a good free cash position, maybe using some free cash or other funds to reduce the overall debt on the transfer station project, because where we have high operating reserves and we're taxing people, and then we're also increasing their transfer station working. It's like they're getting taxed twice for using the transfer station, and the permit fee just keeps on going up. And again, it's a lot higher. As I said, probably the highest in Massachusetts for that permit fee. And my concern more is people are going to shift to private haulers, and that's just going to force the price going up. So we are losing, our permits are actually decreasing since we've increased the price that much. And so that just means that the cost is just going to keep on going up, and it'll be serving less customers directly. So something to evaluate maybe.
Yeah. Well, it is budget season,
Yeah.
so we could look at it. Okay. I don't know what page we're on, Beth.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not following along here,
just
but
quick couple more updates. I've been speaking with the school superintendent, and the MSB has announced that they are currently accepting statements of interest for consideration for new school building projects. The submittals are due Friday, April 11th, so I'll be working with the superintendent to bring something forward to both the school committee and the select board to consider for the Morocco School project. And then just very quickly, a couple capital updates. Work is ongoing at the McDonald Field Pump Station, and that project is hopefully will be complete by March, and we'll have that new pump station online. South Reservoir Dam project is moving forward well. That project is expected to be completed this summer. And then the Mystic School Heat project has also been ongoing over this winter since the project was awarded, and they hope to be completed in the spring, and obviously pending Eversource being able to power up those units. And then we have a lot of projects currently either out to bid or on the way to being out to bid that were funded at fall town meeting. So, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to do one quick switch on the agenda, but is anybody in the audience here for public comment on an article that we're not taking up tonight? So any public comment that's not related to traffic, outdoor dining, potentially the T or 160 Forest Street? And if you are here for anything not on the agenda, I would invite you to come forward and give public comment. Otherwise, we'll take it up when we take it up. Show of hands? No. All right. So, Jackie, with your grace, and Matt, we're going to just hold on the public hearing for a minute and do our first business item, which is committee appointments. If that's okay with you. So I would like to invite Jim Johnson and Enzo Roscianato. I think I see you. Okay. To come up to the table for capital planning. And Adrian is not expected this evening, right?
No.
The design review committee? Okay.
You have his application.
Yes.
And if you just need to waive the,
Okay, come on up. We can have you both.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. I'm going to start with you, Jim, and I think we do have your application, both of you. So, personal statement, whatever it is you'd like to share, then we'll go to Enzo.
Personal statement, I think you all have my comments. I believe my record speaks for itself. Since the mid-'85s, I've been active in Winchester town government, starting out at town meeting like everybody does, going into FinCom, eventually becoming a selectman. In various stints, I've been involved in many capital projects, which primarily started with the determination that the Lynch School was too big of a project for capital handle, and that was the development of the EFPBC. I have worked on many projects that I'm very proud of. One of the longest going ones, and I know I'm the only civilian left on the flood mitigation program, which is over 25 years. It's getting close, not quite finished.
So close.
Project I'm very proud of as a capital member is the Veterans Honor Roll right out here. It pays respect and honor to the people from our community that served the town. That was a grassroots organization, which is partially funded by private funds, and the town contributed a substantial amount of money. It improved the center of this intersection, was something that design review always wanted. I have worked on many other projects, trying to, there's so many I can't think of, but I mean, one of the projects as early as this year was when Michael arranged to get some financing from Eversource for the Leonard Field. Thank you, Michael. The Capital Committee, we talked about, and I felt that the citizens of the Main Street area, or North End, had as much aggravation and stress as the people on the Washington Street end. We successfully worked with you people, Select Board and other groups, and determined that we were right in that both playgrounds should be worked at the same time. And we took it to town meeting, the Finance Committee agreed with it, and it passed. And it's a good project. It's a great example of working together, jointly, having the vision to call this to someone's attention. Another project is, there's some times on projects I haven't been on board. I've voiced my opinion. I've learned to listen to both sides. I've learned to come to common grounds. A good example was when we started the field projects. We started our first field project in the early 80s within West Side Field. We've worked collaboratively when Mike was on the board, I believe, on field projects. I was a member of the Board of Selectmen, and at the same time I was a member of the Capital Committee. I've been on the Capital Committee for a very long time. I know this town better than most people, better than all people almost. I care about it. I've gained respect of other people by working hard. Like I said, I've been on the board for a long time. I've also been honored to be Citizen of the Year in 2016, and that's all part of my dedication to this community. And to be honest with you, I'm having a real hard time with this policy. And I would like, if you would indulge me a few minutes to make some comments on it.
If you could,
You want me to save that?
yeah, let's
Okay.
save that,
I'll save
actually,
that.
because I think that will
Thank you.
come up. It's relevant, so I promise we'll come back. And then I'll have Enzo give his sort of maybe intro, and then I think people can ask questions of either candidate. But we'll have personal statements, and we'll have questions we'll start with Mr. Johnson, then we'll go to Mr. Rushinato. Am I getting your name right? I hope so.
Yeah, perfect, actually. Surprise.
I can thank the moderator who used to call on you at town meetings, so there you go.
That's right. That's good. So my name's Enzo Rushinato. I think I've met most of you, if not all, but just to give you a little bit of background about me, this is my 10th year living in Winchester. I'm a current town meeting member as well from Precinct 1. I've served on the Finance Committee for the last 6 years. My term just ended in June of 24, and that included being vice chair in 2019 as well as chair in 2020. I've also served on lots of other town groups over the years in my stint. I was on the Waterfield Task Force. I chaired actually the town manager search committee that wisely selected Beth a couple of years ago. And I was also on the transfer station working group that you were talking about 5 minutes ago. I actually built the model for that. So very interested to see how that pans out if we're looking to revive that, because I thought that was actually a really interesting project. In my private career, I have a bachelor's and an MBA in finance, and I've done lots of different roles in my career. I kind of bounced around. I was in finance. I've done operations roles, technology roles, program management, project management. I'm kind of a jack of all trades. And I think that experience really, I think, translates and meshes well with what I think you need in CPC, right? I think there's a lot of budgets and planning work associated with that. I've managed a large real estate portfolio and a facilities team that covered 80 properties. I've done lots of complex project management. I've done contract negotiation and sourcing with large vendors. So a lot of various experiences that I think translate well to the role. And I've worked extensively with CPC in my years with Finance Committee, especially when I was chair. And I've worked with Jimmy a lot as well. So his experience is, bar none, way more extensive than mine. But I do think I would add a lot of value to the role, and I look forward to throwing my hat in the ring. And thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask if people have questions for either candidate, and then we can talk about the sort of select board policy. But
Sure.
anybody questions for?
So Enzo and Jim, thanks very much. Two great candidates, absolutely. Enzo, you haven't been on CPC, but you've been all around it. What do you, from an outside looking in, what do you, how do you think you could contribute, or maybe bring a different perspective, or based on your background? And
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of both, right? Like I have been around CPC and from a lot of different angles,
Yeah.
but always kind of on the outside looking in. That's why I thought it's always been interesting, and I think it would bring a lot of bring a challenge, right? To come in with a little bit of a fresh perspective. And I think this is actually a really interesting time for CPC too, with all of the massive capital projects that we have out there, and how are we going to pay for them, how what order, what's the right prioritization, how do you do the maintenance. So these are all things that I think I can bring a lot to the table. I think the committee itself, if you look at it across the board, it has a ton of experience, right? Roger's been there for forever, and so is Chris Nixon, and so is Mark, and several of the other folks, right? So I think bringing a fresh perspective would be good for the committee, and it's something that I think would fit well with my background.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy, for reapplying, and Enzo, appreciate the interest in the committee. So capital is kind of always top of mind probably for this group as well as the CPC, but could you both just articulate what is sort of the biggest upcoming challenge that you would see for a capital planning committee or the town, and then what would be sort of the biggest opportunity, or the I don't know, next frontier of capital, but what would be kind of the thing that you would look forward to accomplishing there.
Biggest thing for me is money. And I've sat at this board for many years asking for additional funds, we worked last year with this board in creating approximately a $15 million capital budget, and that is from pressure from this board, creative financing, gift money. Where do you go from there? You do the best you can with the money you have available. And we have developed over the years a ranking priority. And as everybody knows, department heads come forward beginning of the fiscal year, make their presentation. We listen to them. We don't make any comments. We ask questions, but we don't make any comments where it's going to rank. We then sit down, see if there are any questions that haven't been answered or we didn't ask. Once we have that, we start ranking the projects. And anybody who's looked at it, it's pretty much amazing how most of the projects fall in line real quick. Over the last many years, a few years, whatever you call them, well, many years, yeah, it is many years, we've allocated some of our top priority budgets that we don't even rank. And then we work it out. We work it out, we listen, we present it to the town manager and the select board, a sitting select board. We tweak it. You guys asked it to be tweaked last year with the traffic signals and a couple other things. We reallocate it, and we get it done within the budget. I mean, everybody would like to have a blank check, but the priorities are public health, public safety first, economic benefit after that, and then, what does the public need? And that's how we get to our capital budget. We present it to the fall town meeting in a capital report, which works very well. And then in the spring, the items we haven't allocated, we present again to capital, and we might tweak a little things here or there. Right now, a vehicle that is inoperable came forward after the ranking cycle, so we're probably going to look at that and evaluate the request for that for the April town meeting, spring town meeting. Does that answer your question? Was there two parts to that?
I think you rolled. No, you got it. You
Okay,
put it all
thank
together.
you.
Yeah, there were. I think you answered them.
Yeah, so I mean, I think very similar. I think the money is the big question, right? The money and the prioritization are the two things that we have to figure out. And I think one of the things that I probably do a little differently or try to play a bigger role in from a CPC perspective is not just saying, hey, give us what you give us and we'll figure out where it should go. It's more about, well, let's look at all the different options of how do we fund that, right? There's lots of different ways to fund it, whether it's, an override or taking on more debt or et cetera, right? And I think it's about understanding all those different options and helping be more of a partner to the town manager and to the select board to figure out how to pay for those things, and then looking at the priority as well. Like, I think the ranking process is definitely very consensus driven, which is great. But I think there's also about looking at what's most important from a town perspective, like what's most falling apart. Like, not just looking at numbers and trying to rank things, but also making sure that you're picking the projects that are most impactful for the town, and maybe overriding that ranking when needed.
Sure.
And then, Enzo, for you as a sort of follow-up there, in recent years, so Capital sort of puts out their proposals and it comes to town meeting for a vote, and in recent years there's been sort of a bit of a difference in how FinCom looks at what Capital brings forward and what Capital brings forward to town meeting. So how would your recent experience in FinCom in the past few years, where there's been sort of essentially a lot of voting against the things that Capital brings forward, including bridges that we've heard, bridges and
Culverts.
Culverts, thank you. A universal culvert symbol. Bridges and culverts that have then sort of been inspected and determined actually they were in pretty significantly poor condition. Sort of what would your previous perspective from FinCom look like if brought to the capital committee?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a misnomer to say that FinCom voted against a lot of things. I think we maybe vote for against one capital project a year, probably on average, I'd say. For the most part, we're in lockstep with what capital comes out. We have 2 members on the capital committee that vote, so that I think helps with making sure that the 2 committees stay fairly aligned. I think the couple of projects that might have failed over the years, I think the one that you're referring to, it was a year where I think we put forward 7 different projects to go and get estimated, and I think that was something that rubbed finance committee the wrong way, because it was like you're trying to estimate a whole bunch of different projects, and you can't do them all because you don't have funding for all of them. So why estimate them all? And then knowing that you'll probably only get 2 or 3 done, and then the other 3 or 4 estimates might sit on the shelf for a while, and you risk having to do it again. So I think it was just more a difference of opinion from that perspective of not estimating so many and really just picking the ones you really want to get done and focusing on those. And that was just more of a difference of opinion of how to tackle the problem versus not saying that we don't think we needed that culvert or that bridge, the one that ended up failing.
May I follow up on that? What you're talking about was about a year ago.
Hold on, wait a second.
Okay.
I think the question was for Enzo, so
Okay.
I don't know, I'm going to let Anthea say if she wants to.
Yeah, no, I would be happy to hear a follow-up on that. It was specific to Enzo's experience, but I think if we're evaluating both.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry. What you're specifically talking about was 2 years ago when the Board of Selectmen and town staff asked for approximately 10 projects to be funded because there was the possibility of an override. The capital committee generally does not like to fund engineering projects unless we have funds available to do it within the next year or so. What specifically happened here was the select board and town staff decided that there's a strong possibility they would consider an override. We put forward these projects at the request of the select board and town staff, which is in our policy to working with staff. They were engineered, and luckily some of them were done last year because you had the paperwork. So it's a real catch-22. Yes, some of them may sit on the shelves, but some of them are in the process of getting done. And there's a possibility, if the capital committee can work coming up for next year, we could get a couple more of these projects done. These are big money projects. Roofs, Lincoln Flat work, and it takes time to, first of all, identify the project and understand what it is, and then to finance it. How are you going to finance it? I mean, one of the reasons the capital committee did not want a bond for years is because our bonding capacity didn't allow us to do much in the building stabilization fund. We had determined over the years to have a balance of debt service, i.e. bonding, versus cash expenditures. So it's a very complicated situations, and they have to be evaluated on a year-to-year basis, and we have to get input from staff, from select board, from other committees or people, school committee that want something. So it's not as simple as it seems. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. Some of it's frustrating, but we do get it done.
I think it's a great, I want to make sure I get to Bill, but Jim, I think that's a great point that we did. It took us a couple of cycles, but we did get a half a dozen, 6 or 7 of those, or Lincoln Flat work in the fall. 2, 4, 6 of those 8 or 9 are going to be done in 3 town meetings. So I think it's an excellent point. Bill, I want to ask you any questions, and I'll go to Mike.
Sure. First off, Mr. Racinato, I want to make sure I understood something that you just said in your answer to Ms. Brady. Did I hear you clearly that you suggested a potential need to override the consensus of the Capital Planning Committee when they come to their consensus on what projects need to be done?
It's a question of how you select the projects.
Oh, this is a yes or no question, because I want to make sure I heard you correctly. It sounded like you think that there are needs at times when the Capital Planning Committee currently engages in its ranking process, which has been tested many years over, that it would need to be overridden Is that what you were suggesting?
Yes, I think I was suggesting that. I
Why
mean,
and how?
because ultimately, if you're taking everyone and you're making them rank a bunch of different projects, most of the time that's going to be great for selecting the exact best projects, right? But not always, right? Sometimes people will rank things in an order that is not necessarily conducive for, like, 'cause you look at who's on the capital committee, right? You have somebody from planning board, somebody from school committee, someone from finance committee, someone, right? So it's meant to get lots of perspectives across various parts of the town. So you're getting all those perspectives, but then when you sum them all up, you have to figure out which ones are still the best ones for the overall town, right? So it's just it's just another data point that I think you need to factor in. If you're just going to base it completely on the numbers and the ranking system, sometimes you're going to make a mistake.
So who would you suggest has the power to override the capital planning committee in that process? It seems like the process is there for a reason.
I think it's the overall committee. Once you're done with the ranking process, you see what the numbers tell you, but then you don't just be a complete, slave to the numbers, right? It's the overall committee then reviewing that and saying, hey, does this really make sense? Is this really the best projects? Let's look at, let's say there's 20 projects that are going to get, is the cut, right? Let's look at number 18, 19, and 20. Let's look at 21, 22, and 23, and then let's see if that's the right place to cut it. Because I think there might. I mean, if you look at the way the scoring system works, the difference between the 20th project and the 21st project is it's a sliver, right? So it's just about reviewing that and making sure that you're making the best decision for the town.
I hear your answer. In part, that sounds like exactly what they already do, in that I've seen them bring a holistic review to wherever the rankings fall. I've only been involved in the process this one past year, but they did that when they looked at, say, the Packer-Ellis tennis courts and also the RFID issues. But at the same time, there's a collaborative need for a board like the CPC to make sure things run smoothly, and that the education is there and brought to town meeting as well. Which I guess really kind of then gets to my ultimate question tonight for you, which is a very uncomfortable one. Mr. Johnson has been on the Capital Committee maybe since it was first created. Certainly longer than I've been around town, longer than you've been around town. It's hard to think of Capital without him. And it is a big priority for me that we start getting some new blood in. But if there's one exception to that, it's probably Jimmy Johnson on the Capital Planning Committee. We've seen here tonight how intimately he knows the pieces of equipment, the personality, the funding, everything. And so, we are going to have to wrestle with a policy when we make this decision tonight. But do you really think that it is the best interest of the town to deprive us of the resource that is Jim Johnson on the Capital Planning Committee?
So, I've worked with Jimmy for many years myself, right? So, and I can't argue with you that he's, he knows a ton about capital. He's been on the committee for forever. He's forgotten more about CPC knowledge than I'll probably ever know, right? So I'm not disagreeing from that perspective. But to your point, like, I think there should be some new blood, right? And I think that we talked a little bit about it at town meeting around the term limits, and what struck me and what actually kind of motivated me to apply was, people were saying, why you don't need term limits. If people really want the role, they'll apply, right? And let the chips fall where they may. So, that kind of inspired me to go ahead and put it in there. Do I know as much about capital as Jimmy? Absolutely not. But I do feel like I can bring a fresh perspective. I think it's not like I'm coming into this brand new. I've been around town politics for the last 6 years, intimately in some places, and I think I know enough to hopefully not be a complete, be able to pull my weight, but at the same time be able to bring a fresh perspective.
Okay.
All right. Mike, do you have any questions, or do we want to?
Just a comment. And I don't know if we're talking a little bit about this policy. So
let's put it out there on the table.
So I'll just reference it briefly. The board had heard from a number of years that there wasn't a lot of room for residents to get involved in committees because people would just re-up every year and year after year. And it was important for the board, at least at that time, to hear some different voices and to make the community feel like they had a stake in the outcome of decision making. And so it's always been our policy to encourage people, and we've even extended out the time of these conversations if we need more people, if we feel that there are more people that should be involved. So I think the policy there is not to say one person against the other. The policy says take a year off if you've had 3 consecutive terms on a committee, right? That's 9 years. That's a long time. Jimmy, I think it's 20 that you've been on capital, right? And it doesn't mean that you don't have expertise. Your expertise doesn't add value to the town. Of course it does. But I think that we need to stick to a policy if people are going to believe that it really matters to us that they get involved in things and we hear from them. So on the capital side, I've been involved in the capital process and been the board's representative of the capital committee, I think when I was chair of the select board at that point. And one of the things that I feel doesn't work is the way that our ranking process works. It is horse trading. It is people making deals. It is not a prioritization. And this is what we've heard from FinCom over the past several years is we need a 5-year capital plan. We need the cost of our projects are getting a lot more expensive. Our buildings are getting a lot more complicated. The new Lynch is going to require maintenance just like the high school, and those costs increase, and we have to plan for that. So we've done some planning. We've invested in the VFA to allow us to look down the road to see when replacement of certain equipment needs to be done. But I think when you look around most communities around the Commonwealth, the way that we do our capital planning is antiquated, and it doesn't lend itself to prioritizing things in the way that that really needs to be prioritized: health, safety, things like that. So I would hope that the capital planning committee in the future would entertain a 5-year capital plan. My requests for that have gotten a lot of resistance, and I think that's because people enjoy the freedom of horse trading. If you're a representative from the school committee or you're represented from another committee and you want a certain project to move forward and you want to have that delivered for yourself, you're ranking something higher in order to get it above the line to get through and get funded. The other part of it is, and I think...
So, Mike, if you want to focus on the policy, because I think if there's a question about the process, you could certainly be a representative to capital, right? So I want to just maybe say, so let's separate those two things. But the policy about not reappointing after 3 terms, I think, is where we're going to go next. But your concern about the process, maybe Enzo's solution, which would be different from Jimmy's, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're trying to fill this seat with one person. So I just want to put you back to... If that's where you're going, let's go down that path. But of the policy that we have to wrestle with tonight, and then other commentary, I think, about the process. I think a 5-year plan is relevant, but I think the rest of it we could take up in the season of capital. That's all.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have people interviewing for the position of capital, so that's why it came up, and you had wanted us to talk about the policy itself at some point. So I was talking about both.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
That was the substance of my comments. So, I guess my question for both of you is, what does it look like to move away from the ranking process as it exists now into a 5-year capital plan? And I know that there has been a resistance to that, and I think to Enzo's point, it may be that we say we can fund this project now, and we've got the money for it. But the other project that's more important that may take a couple years to fund, how do we get there? So I think that's what we don't do well at all. I think we go for the easy things, and then things get pushed further down the line, even if they are more of a priority for the town. So I guess that's my question for you on a 5-year capital plan. What is your perspective there? Either one of you, it doesn't matter.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I mean, I absolutely agree with the 5-year capital plan. I think when I was chair in 2020, that was one of the things I proposed to the capital planning committee as well, is to go from a 3-year to a 5-year. And, we even laid out like a template to do that. And I thought actually that's what we're already using a 5-year capital plan now. It took a year or two, but I think it ultimately, I think that was accepted as being a good idea to do going forward, is to look out several years and look at all the different projects and see how it all stacks out. And I think so absolutely. I think just one more quick point on Ms. McGonigal's question. It's like in terms of process, I can't help but talk about process because I'm a process efficiency advisor. That's kind of what I do. So I never look at a process and say it's done and it's perfect the way it is. So I will always be trying to looking at better ways of doing things. As we talked about earlier, I've been looking at CPC from the outside in for years, right? So I don't necessarily know all the inner workings of how the committee works. So that's something I look forward to learning more about. It's one of the reasons why I applied for the role.
I somewhat disagree with what you said, Michael. We have a 5-year plan. The only problem is when you look out 3-5 years, Beth will do when she's doing a budget. Everything changes within that period. The plan we have now is a year-to-year plan looking in years 2, 3, 4, and out. Department heads come forward, give us projections of what they think they need. We know that we have a multi-year plan to improve the roads and sidewalks in this town. That's going to go in perpetuity. We have an ADA plan that we've installed over the years, and we pay that $125 a year. This year, the Capital Committee, at somewhat my urging and other members, we're requesting that to be reevaluated because that 10-year plan was supposed to be paid off. It isn't. We're going to have to go forward with a revised ADA plan to fund ADA issues, because ADA issues, if not annually, biannually changes. Yes, you got the new Lynch, which will address some ADA issues. You got, it's a priority. We also, this year, was talking to the fire chief. The fire chief has flagged in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to need 2 fire trucks. We put away a little money this year, and we're trying to lessen that blow going forward. New fire trucks in 5 years from now could probably cost $2 and as high as $3 million. That equipment has gone crazy. We figured if we put a little bit away each year, maybe I think we've set aside 200, maybe 300 based upon any spring demands. So we are planning on a limited basis what you're suggesting, but it's very hard. It's like the town manager's budget. She cannot really develop a 5-year program. She can make some scenario, she can do some figuring, she can grow numbers, but we can't do a multi-year, correct, on target 3 to 5 year plan. And if you could, we would look at it. We know what's going to happen. We know we're going to need trucks. We know we're going to need equipment. We know we got buildings. I mean, you talk about a 5-year plan. 2 years ago, maybe 3, I'll have to go back and look, we started talking about roofs. So we do have some sort of long-term planning. We were the ones that support the VHA that can look out 3 to 5 years to give the DPW room and time to sort of plan. But Emily will tell you, it's just a tool, and things age at different times. The roofs can age sooner or later. That's one of the reasons we did that study, to evaluate the roofs. We're doing some roofs this year. We're going to have to do some next year. So I disagree with you. The process almost works very well. Is it perfect? No, but nothing in government is perfect. Nothing in life is perfect. We have a plan that works. Now, you talk about consensus.
Yeah, can we not necessarily talk about, I don't know. I feel like we've got the answer on consensus, so that's okay. I think if what Bill has said, that you go down and look and revisit, I think there was a way to address both what Enzo's suggesting and the way current reality is. So I want to put it out to the group. we have a policy that says if you've served 3 terms, you take a year off. So I had a question of, Jimmy got reappointed in 2022. I wasn't on the board. I said, how did that happen, right? That would have been more than 3 years. There was no other applicant. Today, we have an applicant. We had another committee recently with another long-term member serving maybe a 4th term, but there was no other applicant, so we reappointed, so as to not leave a seat vacant. We have, in the Cultural Council, we had a person who served 3 terms, who was asked to take a year off, who we just appointed to a new 3-year term, maybe starting the clock again. So we've seen this policy both reappoint people when there was no one else who showed interest, also have someone step aside for a year and come back and start a new 1 3-year term, 2 3-year term, 3 3-year term. So it has worked in that taking a year off hasn't meant you're gone. We've actually seen a person come back and do it. So that's what we face ourselves with. I don't know that I have questions for Jimmy or Enzo. I know them both. I think the question is, where do we want to be as a board? I think to Enzo's point about term limits, we did discuss that in the spring at town meeting. It didn't necessarily prevail. Wasn't a charter change either, but the idea of there's a person who's expressed interest, we don't always have that interest. And what do we do with the policy? I think Mike was the only board member here when we developed the policy, but a board did so, and I think we've lived with it. And I went back and did a little bit of homework to just understand kind of who's been impacted. But where do we, if someone wants to make a motion, I don't care. If we want to have more discussion, that's fine too, but that's where we find ourselves. Yes.
I have just a question about the implementation of that policy. So do we, because I believe in that policy, sorry, you have a hard copy. It says you're notified individuals whose terms are expiring 6 months ahead of the date. So when we do that, do we notify people who are at the end of that term limit that they reached the end of that limit?
I notify everyone.
Sorry.
But not 6 months.
No, sorry. My question is, when we say your term is up, do we say your term is up and you have served 3 consecutive terms, or do we just say?
I believe so.
Yes, I've been doing that.
Okay.
I have been.
Pretty consistently.
Yeah, since, this year.
Well, I feel like it's certainly in last calendar year,
Right, yes.
there were people.
Which is why you had Mr. Ruff's application.
Okay. Okay.
I think just on that specific point, Michelle, I think the benefit when on the Cultural Council, when we ask somebody to step aside for a year, is we got somebody new in their position that has added great value to that committee, and then the person that wasn't there before came on, is now working with that other person when somebody came off, right? So it encourages new people to come forward that can add value as well. And then if that other person that's stepped aside for a year is still interested, they can come back, and you've got a new group of people to work that's very committed to the project. So whatever it may be.
How many positions on Capitol are not appointed through other arenas? So we have school committee, planning, 2 from FinCom. John's on there, but a non-voting member. And then
3 select board appointments.
3 appointments?
And the assistant town manager serves as the town manager's representative.
So,
Right now, Jimmy's up, which means next year Roger,
No, Helen's
Helen.
next year, and then Roger's the year after.
Helen's next year.
Yeah.
has, how, not really, has everybody on Capitol, Helen's been on Capitol for,
This is the same discussion we will have next year.
okay. And will the same discussion with Roger as well?
So we could,
Is Roger in his 3rd term?
Yes.
All 3 of
Yes.
them have been much more than, they've been all together with Jimmy.
So I'm a rule follower, right? Most of the time. And
Really?
yeah. And so we have this policy, and I figured we have a policy for a reason, which is to follow the policy. And I mean, Jimmy, you're an invaluable resource. to the town, and if we want to change the policy, then we should change the policy. Like, we should have term limits for select board members, right? Just hear me out, too. But we haven't changed the policy. And I don't want to gerrymander the policy, because then that erodes the trust, at least in my perspective, of the board, because we made an exception for you or someone else. And over the last couple of years, especially the first year I was on the board, there were sometimes people who were going for reappointment, and they had been on a board for, let's say, 6 years, and they're going for their third term. And I was for reappointing them. But we had other members who wanted to bring on new members, and to my disappointment, I was outvoted. But I saw the wisdom in that, and then I listened to town meeting this year, and I'm sensitive to bringing in and getting others involved in town government and town operations. I'm also in the back of my mind thinking a year off, but you would be back because you're devoted to the town, and something we very much appreciate. Maybe you won't because you're mad about it, and I wouldn't blame you. But that's really where I'm coming down on this. So that's my thinking.
Okay.
I feel a lot of what John's saying right there. It's tough to have a policy and then just completely ignore it. And we made a big point about following the insurance policy at Springtown meeting and putting money back in. I don't like this policy. I think it really handcuffs us. It says that we shall appoint somebody if they're qualified. And Mr. Ashton, you're qualified. I can't argue against that. And this is one of these, tough cases make bad law situations where, again, I think, I wish we could just expand the capital planning committee by one, put both these guys on.
That was Anthea's question, but I don't think we can.
I mean, we did it for
Climate
Action Committee. We had two really excellent candidates, and we said it would be a loss not to have both of these people on climate action. That wasn't the question I was going to. I think, it is challenged when you have a board, a committee, where there are three sort of at-large appointments and four, sort of provisioned in appointments, and that, theoretically promotes some natural turnover in the provisioned in people, but on the the three then appointed members, it does kind of have potential to lose just a lot of historical knowledge in the way that works, versus if you had 7 people and or 5 people and they're serving terms and they're all kind of appointed, and a lot of that knowledge is built over time and is available to stretch through. I think, I just different tools for different things.
I think we're all struggling with this.
Yeah.
But we could have come in here tonight and not even had an interview, because it is already decided, according to this policy, which of these two we have to appoint. And the fact that we are sitting here interviewing them as in-depthly as we are, grilling them, having all
Making
these
everybody else wait, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
We're almost done.
Shows you, maybe this isn't the best policy, but I don't think we can change it at this moment and still maintain, our credibility with our voters, and people we represent. And it's a...
And this doesn't diminish your capability,
Yeah.
your contribution. I don't want to think, that's not it. It's a different
It's
discussion.
like the worst test scenario we could ever possibly have.
Thank you for saying that. I wasn't even thinking of, sorry, I wasn't thinking of the impact of what that sounds like to
It's
Enzo.
obvious. I just think Jimmy's got an incredible background, and it's like I almost feel bad about it myself. I feel like at some point, if you want new people to come up, you got to step up, and I felt like it's got to happen at some point, right? So if this is not the right time, then that's fine too. But I feel like I had to throw my hat in the ring.
So can I just, in looking at the policy, it's kind of vague. It's specific in a member who has served consecutively for 3 terms shall not be reappointed to the same committee until it lapses after a year. provided the board vote to waive this candidate where no other qualified candidate is available. And as we've discussed, you're incredibly qualified. And so I think that the challenge here is that maybe we haven't positioned ourselves to enact this policy in the right way. So I'm thinking, if we're going to follow this policy and enact this policy, that the appropriate thing to do would be to say, this is not a reappointment, that this is open for new candidates, and if we find that there's not candidates interested, or if people apply and they're not qualified, that then the previous member, and that's kind of that's not what the policy states, but it feels like, it's a policy, it's not a process.
I think we need to revisit. I think that's potentially a good way. I think Bill makes some good points too. I think we need to make a motion tonight, and I think we need to, but I agree with, I think, all of us that this probably need some implementation, some clarity, and maybe not the shall not, but may, or, could choose to. But I think this is where we find ourselves, and we had talked about, inviting people and different interests and perspectives in town committees, and the fact that it's Jimmy Johnson sitting at us is what makes it hard, I think, for all of us. But
and Michelle, too, I mean, we've had a situation over the years where we've had 5 people apply for one position, right? So it's not, we're deciding between, one. It makes it a little bit more difficult for us, but I think that's why that shall is there. And I think that we also wanted to make sure that somebody that was applying wasn't there just trying to get somebody else out that was a good volunteer, right? So it's, so with both of they're both highly qualified. And so I think, it's a good position for us. And I think the hard part of creating a policy like this is it forces us to make tough decisions, which is, I think, what the voters expect us to be doing,
that's what this feels like.
Yep.
All right.
All right, I move that we appoint Enzo Racinato as a member of the Capital Planning Committee to a term to expire January 1st, 2028.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, thank you for letting me be in the capital committee for as long as I have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Jimmy, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you both very much for coming
Consider
in.
applying next year, please.
Please.
All right.
No one says we fun every day.
What?
So no one says we fun every day.
Jackie, come on up if you could. We'll do Eversource. So we're going to call a public hearing to order. We have 3 items in our public hearing this evening. The first is a grant of location from Eversource, and then we have 2 traffic hearings. I know we have traffic up on the screen, but we're going to start with Eversource for 12 Pilgrim Drive. Thanks for your patience.
Jackie Duffy, Eversource. Would like to install approximately 4 feet of conduit in Pilgrim Drive. The customer is requesting to go underground from overhead. It's to feed 12 Pilgrim Drive.
I know that we have in the packet, Matt, you've got it has all the approvals. We've got the schematic. No concerns from engineering.
We had no comments or concerns.
Okay. Any questions? I know we do this pretty much as a matter of course, so, okay.
I think over the years, Jackie's probably attended more of our meetings reluctantly and heard more of our discussions than necessary.
It's
so.
okay.
All right.
Oh, sorry. I move that we approve I was going to ask Matt a question. That we approve the Eversource grant of location on Pilgrim Drive to install approximately 4 feet of conduit in the public right-of-way to provide electric service to 12 Pilgrim Drive.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion
Thank you.
passes.
All right.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Good night.
Matt,
Okay.
what's going on with that gas pump station on Cross Street?
That is not on the agenda.
I know. I'm just asking.
National Grid.
Is it?
Michelle's getting back on track, John. Let her do her
done.
job.
It's all done? All right.
Yeah, I believe it's just gonna, restoration will be in the spring.
Perfect. That was easy.
Yeah, it was.
All right.
Fine. I hate when you hijack my agenda when we've already
I
spent.
just it's questions in there.
Okay. Mystic Avenue, is anybody in the audience here for this Mystic Avenue piece of the public hearing? I'm going to keep asking, so when your topic comes up, maybe just make yourselves known. That'd be great. Then I will just turn it over to Matt, and you'll go through. Then we'll get to Johnson Road.
Sure, so this arises from citizen request. They actually requested a couple of different things, and I'll talk about each of them in general, but the real recommendation was for the crosswalk. So there were 4 things that were requested. It's based on concerns about speed, cut-through traffic in the neighborhood, the proximity to the school, and pedestrian access to the school. It was for stop signs at all of the streets that end at Mystic Ave, pedestrian crosswalks be painted, speed platforms or raised tables on the street, and then a crossing guard. So I'm not sure how familiar folks are, but Mystic Ave connects Main Street and Mystic Valley Parkway. It is in proximity to the fields and this middle school, as well as being on the way down to Bacon Street. So it provides pretty good connectivity for pedestrians and for vehicles. We did perform some traffic counts just to gain some basic information about what's going on the street. These were done in September 2023. It's a thickly settled neighborhood, so the speed limit is de facto 25 miles per hour. We did see 85th percentile speed of 27 miles per hour, which is a little bit higher than the 25. And 85th percentile means that when we did the counts, 85% of the vehicles we observed were going 27 miles per hour or less. The weekday traffic volumes, we had about 460 vehicles per day, and the weekend was a little bit lower. So this does suggest to us there's a little bit of traffic, I don't know if I'd call it cut-through traffic, but there's more traffic during the weekday, perhaps because we have the school nearby, or again, trying to get to Bacon Street or some other areas. And then in the peak hours, we had about 50 vehicles per hour, so that's a little bit less than 1 vehicle per minute.
So question, so did you have any crossing, there was a crosswalk request, which I know you're going to get to, but did you have any counts of people on foot going to the middle school, either for school, after school, or during practices?
We didn't do any pedestrian counts, but the equipment we have is really good at counting vehicles. It doesn't really count
Standing there.
other stuff.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I can attest dozens of kids cross there every day.
Yeah, I'm sure. Actually, I don't know if it was in my graphic, but you'll see the photo that I took from Google actually has
Just a couple
kids
people.
standing
Yep.
there. So
I realize it's not as easy to sort of like click and time lapse. I was just curious.
Yeah.
But Bill can give us anecdotal and factual, I'm sure, information.
So, in general, the speed's pretty consistent with what we see on streets in town, and the volume's also pretty consistent with what one would expect given the proximity to the schools, some of the side streets. Manchester Road's a one-way street off of Mystic Ave, so if you're heading in that direction, you're coming down Mystic Ave. In terms of our recommendations, we felt that it made sense to install stop signs and stop bars at all of the cross streets, and I believe I have maybe I'll just go to the graphic. So this gives you a sense of, we have Lloyd Street, Maxwell Road, and Cutting Street, which all intersect. So we felt that marking with stop signs and stop bars was appropriate based on assignment of right-of-way, and particularly marking the crosswalks to reinforce, stopping. Like I said, Manchester Road is one way, so it doesn't warrant a stop sign, obviously. And then we also are recommending a crosswalk across Mystic Ave between Lloyd Street and Manchester Road. Again, I'm not going to go into every iteration we looked at. We did look at a number of different iterations for where we thought the most appropriate place for the crosswalk was, and we felt that this location was the most appropriate. There are some gaps on Mystic Ave further down in the sidewalk, further down from Maxwell Road, so it doesn't make sense to really put a crosswalk there. We looked at the other side of Lloyd Street, which would be the plan on the right side if you're looking at the plan, but this location seemed to make the most sense.
Especially given where cars will be stopping, right? Like the visibility is away from where the cars will be.
Yeah, just to add some color here, there are a large number of kids who will come down Winslow Road, walk through an easement that goes behind some houses, that then pops into someone's driveway on Mystic, and it's right east of Lloyd Street here. It's probably right where your picture cuts off. So having a crosswalk here is important because then they take Manchester Road to get down to McCall. That's the path of, most direct path for a lot of kids to get to middle school.
So this is just a real schematic of what that might look like. And, you know, I met out there with DPW to look at constructability. There is a utility pole there, so we're recommending just a minor adjustment to the curb line to help with visibility and signage. The tree, you can kind of see a tree kind of beyond the utility pole. That's actually been removed, so that kind of will help enhance the visibility as well. Also talking with DPW in conjunction with the striping and these improvements, we would go and make sure that all the crossings are ADA compliant. So it's not just this one. We would look at all of them. I think that's all I have.
Any questions for Matt? I thought the pictures were helpful, as always. Thank you.
Deferred Bill.
Same general area. I just noticed there's no stop signs on any of the streets that come down on Main Street. Mystic has one, so I think it's the exception to the rule. All the others don't. Is there a reason we don't have? And I mean, you're addressing that here for the sake of Mystic. It seems just weird that we haven't done that in the past already.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of collector and arterial roads in town that I've noticed don't have stop signs.
Expect to.
That you would expect to, absolutely. And I think when we did Cross Street over the summer, I did recommend that all of the streets off of intersecting Cross Street have stop signs. I think the same thing could be done for Main Street. It's a lot of signs for DPW to install, but based on the traffic volumes on Main Street and, you know, right of way, I think it makes sense if the board wanted to consider that as well.
Should I have citizens email you if that's something they want?
I think if the board is directing me that way, that I would just bring it to the board.
Okay. Thank you.
The only question I have, Matt, this road is very steep. You would be surprised until you run up with a stroller. Yeah. So just in, like, I'm sure as you did this, you considered any like hill directions or things like that, because probably coming up the hill, you're having a slower speed than going down it.
I don't have an actual breakdown of what the speed in each direction. It was just 27 miles per hour, but you're right, there probably is a little more speed going down the hill. I think also it would make it more difficult if we wanted to install speed humps, which we haven't recommended, but I think it would make it maybe impractical to do that.
The only other question I have is just in terms of repainting crosswalks. So my child has pointed out that there used to be a crosswalk painted at the end of our street, and it has since sort of faded away. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess there was. I can't see it anymore. But is there like a lifespan on crosswalks and painting of crosswalks and when they need to be sort of?
Usually a year or two, and I'll, not to speak out of turn, but I actually was talking to Bob Labassiere, the DPW director today, and he was mentioning that they are doing a striping survey or or inventory, I guess is the best word. So they're inventorizing all of the town striping, and I guess in the past couple of years they've been a little behind in restriping things, and the intent is to go and get the inventory, use that to bid out striping and get on a better time frame.
Okay. Any other questions?
This street is it's a little bit unusual because it is so thickly settled, and there typically are a lot of cars parked there, so it is difficult to go fast, but people certainly do, and it tends to be a cut-through area there as well. But one of the things that we had looked at in other similar streets like this is kind of chicanes and kind of creating, parking, saying no parking on this side, no parking, so it would create kind of like a weave there that's another kind of traffic calming, method. And I feel like that is a good area too. I always get concerned about crosswalks because I think people have a sense that once they're in the crosswalk, they don't have to pay attention anymore. And we seem to have been adding a lot of crosswalks lately. And so it just concerns me with people not paying attention, feeling like they're safe when it's almost to me like an area where people need to be more aware of their surroundings if there's a crosswalk there, because it means there's heavy traffic coming through at higher speeds. So it's just something for us to look at.
Yeah, I guess it's a good start, but maybe we need to continue to look at.
Yeah, and
Other
where we
options.
have it in crosswalks and we don't, I appreciate the kind of some of the curb work, because I think it's important, and we'll talk about other projects that are coming up where we need to bring in the road a little bit more, not so much here, but make that crosswalk shorter for people. It's important, but when we have crosswalks without rapid flashing beacons, sometimes I feel like it creates more risk, and so that's my concern.
Yeah, and so this street's 24 feet wide, so it's
Yep.
a little bit on the narrow side for
Yes.
bump outs and whatnot, but
Yep.
duly noted.
And as I was saying, sometimes the cars themselves, the way that they're parked, create the best traffic
It's like a
calming as
game of
possible.
Frogger sometimes.
Yes, yeah.
I drive it
But
often.
it's a cut through
Yeah.
street. So
That's a very intentional move on some of our narrower and faster streets, is to park out there when it's busy. And what you raise a point is just where these new crosswalks will there be sort of a no parking, like make sure that people aren't parked up to that, so there is that visibility?
Yeah, so we don't always sign it, which we could consider, but usually you would not be allowed to park within 20 feet of a crosswalk, so that would be kind of like the de facto.
You can hash
Because
it.
it could be, striped or.
Yeah, it could be also be striped. I think given just the neighborhood and the fact this is pretty close to someone's front yard, I might want to just monitor it before putting signs or striping up. But yes.
Okay. Any other questions on Mystic before Matt gets to his next intersection?
How about if I move that we approve the installation of a crosswalk on Mystic Avenue at Lloyd Street and Manchester Street?
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next up, Johnson Road and Cox Road. Come on up. Matt's still going to start, but if we have some public comment, we will turn to you and invite your comment. But Matt, if you could, Patty.
Yeah, I think I may need Patty to get the
right.
other presentation up.
So you have that motion right next, this one?
Let's see.
Looks like it.
Right.
Okay.
Stand.
Thanks. So this was a request for installation of a crosswalk at Cox Road and Valley View Road on Johnson Road, and also for a request for, it said flashing lights, essentially rapid flashing beacon. For those of you, if you're not familiar with the area, this is between Ridge Street and the Lexington Town line. There is, like I said, Cox Road and Valley View Road intersect, so it is kind of like there are four approaches to the intersection. When TRC reviewed the location, we did note that the sidewalk on, I guess that's the south side of Johnson Road, or the Cox Road side, does end at Cox Road, whereas the sidewalk on the Valley View Road side is continuous, I believe, to just shy of Lexington. I think that's Berkshire Drive. So there's a continuous sidewalk on one side, the sidewalk ends on the other. And we felt that provided some justification for adding the crosswalk. I would also add that, and I'm sure the residents will talk, that there was, there is a desire line to cross there in terms of getting to the swim and tennis club, less so the VO, because you have the traffic signal down by Ridge Street, but also they pointed out that there was a school bus stop there. So TRC felt that there were a couple of compelling reasons to install a crosswalk here. And just to give you some views, the sight lines are pretty good. This is looking towards Lexington. I don't think I included the other way, but the sight lines are very good. So TRC does recommend a crosswalk here. I think the concern is installation of a rapid flashing beacon. There is a decent amount of speed on Johnson Road. We did collect some speed data in December, and the 85th percentile was 42 miles per hour, which again is 85% of cars are going 42 miles per hour or less.
That's 35 miles an hour there, right?
It's a 35 mile per hour regulatory speed, although I think some of the signs may say 30. But, you know, it's a hill, it's a relatively wide street. You pick up speed there. So we felt that, you know, rectangular rapid flashing beacon is really warranted in order to install the crosswalk for safety.
Matt, how efficient or effective are those solar-powered speed indicator signs that show you if you come into a 35, because I might be going 40, and I'm like, wow, it's 35, and I'll slow down.
Yeah.
And are those effective or not? Or people just blow them off after a while?
I mean, they're somewhat effective, but it's really hard to tell whether people, you know, do you slow down when you see the sign and then you speed up again?
Right.
You know, there are other. This is tough. It's you know, more of a collector road, so we want you typically have higher speeds. You don't want traffic calming like speed humps on a street like this. However, you know, something like that might help. And I believe by the school zone signs there are speed indicators.
Yes.
There are. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually, Google Maps says there's a school zone sign like right
Just beyond
just
this.
off where you're.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of in the woods.
It's in the woods.
It's not.
It needs to
not
move
very-
over a bit, but yes, it's just past.
I'll say anecdotally, as someone that drives that road pretty often, that you know, I'm never trying to speed, but you know, I
Officer, I didn't mean
appreciate.
to.
I know. I appreciate. I appreciate that reminder that maybe I'm not aware of my speed when I'm coming down that hill and I have long sight lines ahead of me and a lot of road, and everybody else is going that fast. So for me, it's like I can be at 45 very easily coming down that hill. And it doesn't feel, I know, it doesn't feel, even though I do have technically a rapid flashing beacon in my console in my car right in front of me, I can look at that. But if you're, you know, doing the same routes all the time and it just out of habit, you tend to speed a little bit more. And I feel like those are successful for me when I see the speed limit and then I see it flashing when I'm over. There's one on Lockland as well, and I think that's helped with calming in that area. That is another very high speed area. So, and I know they're a little bit more of an investment for us, but I think that they're more effective than just plain signage. So,
Is there a reason that this is a 35 mile an hour zone, like a regulatory reason that's a 35 mile an hour?
So I mean, at some point, the state, perhaps when Johnson Road was built, regulatorily set the speed limit at 35 miles per hour based on the design characteristics. It would probably be very hard to change the speed limit, particularly with the speed data they collected. They might raise the speed limit because it's based on the 85th percentile speed that's collected.
It's like
It
so
is. It is
backwards.
very.
Doesn't make any
I don't
sense.
think we'd want that.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
move on to another topic.
But well, so I mean, I you know, we drive that way. I know it's fast. It's also pretty dark, and there's not a lot of lighting, and so, you know, echoing the idea for those solar flashers. We have them up on Highland now, but also, you know, can we start the school zone out earlier, or can we do those sort of like recommended speed that we've looked at in a couple other places where maybe it's not truly that this is the speed limit, so to say, but it's the recommended speed, and it will get people to slow down. And the other thing that comes to mind is, like, you know, when you have spots where then you're driving and then it's like thickly settled area with the school, you know, he's pointing the school this way, and the swim and tennis club, like, you know, is that also another sort of nudge to people? I'm just thinking of like all the things that I see while I'm driving that are kind of like, oh, this is, you know.
Are those your slides, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure. Wait, hold up. No, so additional public comment if you want to add to that topic.
Thank you for your analysis and for your comments. I live on Cox Road, and my daughter's in 5th grade at VO, so for the last 6 years I've crossed at this location. And the reason I crossed there is because if I were to stay on this side, these cars would be whipping by me and I wouldn't be able to see them with my kids. So I cross so that I can walk on that side and keep my eye on. I've taught my kids, like, look out for distracted drivers, because sometimes you're seeing cars and they're like this and kind of, and I said, that's a car that you want to like be aware of because they're meandering around. So that is my desired path. So, and I've taught my neighbors that I think that that's a safer way to get to school. And it is a bus stop. I was a little alarmed when I saw the way the bus stop stops, which is sort of, it comes halfway into the road and kind of trying to stop traffic in all directions. And I have been educated that that is intentional, that that's the way they're supposed to stop, because they figure that that's safer. But then the kids get off on that southeast corner, and then they just dart across to Valleywood, and the bus is kind of blocking them, and nobody can see the stop sign of the
Bus.
The stop sign's not visible on the bus, and everyone's kind of like, what's that bus doing? Oh, and there's a kid darting across. So, yeah. And then just the speed we've talked about. I'm not sure how the 85, the percentiles work. Obviously, that's your mechanism for analysis, but it's the outliers, you know, it's those like 50-mile-an-hour people that are there a lot. And sometimes it's repeat the same, you see the same speeding cars every day because that's their route to work. So they will, if they see the crosswalk installed, perhaps then they'll know, oh, now there's a crosswalk, I better slow down there. And there is no crosswalk or any sort of traffic calming from Ridge until you get to Lowell Street in Lexington. So that's a really long, there's no crosswalk, there's no stop sign for, I think it's 1.5 miles. I put it in my proposal, but I think it's quite long.
Yep.
So it's a chance for people to really know, oh, now I can ramp up my speed.
It's a good reminder there's humans around, right? Like crosswalks tell us. Yeah.
So you made the proposal that got this all going?
Yes.
Good for you. Name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Alexis Darcy, and I live at 9 Cox Road.
Thank you for that and for the record. And would you like to?
I'm Charlene Ryan. I live on Valleywood Circle, so on the other side. And we've lived there for almost 16 years now. And, everything that's been said here is absolutely accurate. I see people trying to cross to get to Whipple Hill, trying to cross to get to the swim club in one direction or the other, to get to Smith Pond, to get to Wright Lock Farm. It's just such a common passage between Cox and Valleywood. And for years and years, I mean, I have to credit Alexis, because for years I've been kind of saying quietly to my friends and neighbors, like, God, there should be a crosswalk. Someone's going to get hit. Well, my daughter is at the high school now. I have 4 children. Only one of them ever took the school bus, and she stopped taking the school bus this year because she was getting off right there on the corner of Cox. That's where they were picking up and dropping off. And it is a nightmare, really, to get over to Valleywood with the cars coming in both, like, it's just, they're not expecting to have to suddenly stop when they're going, maybe a little bit faster than usual. Every morning she would leave the house and my heart would kind of be in my chest going, is she going to be okay crossing that road? So, Alexis and I both have daughters in 5th grade now, so next year they'll both be going to middle school. And already I've asked my younger daughter, so do you want to take the bus next year? Because, of course, we're very close to VO. It's never been a consideration for her to take the bus there. And she's on the fence about taking the school bus to get to middle school because she would have to make that crossing there. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Matt? Our plan tonight is to, we're going to, at some point, close this public hearing. We'll vote rapid flashing beacons as a separate piece of our business article. So just so you know, you can certainly stay. But any other questions for Matt or the proponents before we wrap up this part of the public hearing?
Just another comment here for Matt. One of the things, it's harder to see here maybe, but we've been trying to, when we've made adjustments for traffic calming to really square off some of these heavily traveled intersections, make them more 90-degree angles, because they do really lend themselves to people from either direction not slowing down or rolling stops or things like that. So this is really one of the worst ones I feel like that we have. That's the west side is kind of notorious for these big open, winding intersections, and so I know that that's a little bit more of a infrastructure change, but certainly if we're putting a crosswalk there, I think that we need to kind of bring that curb closer in and make that crossing shorter. I don't know if that's something that we can do.
So it's funny that the crosswalk, or I should say the ramps that are there, sort of look like they may be compliant already. So I'm not sure if we need to actually do any construction on the ramps. I'm not sure. You could narrow it a little bit, but I'm concerned about the shoulders on Johnson Road, because there are a lot of cyclists that use that area, and I wouldn't want to be, we've heard a lot about folks about bicyclists really appreciating having those shoulders, so I don't think I would want to do like a bump out or something. And the Valley View and Cox are relatively low volume streets. I think there's maybe like 4 or 5 houses on Valley View, and not too many on Cox. So it's certainly something I could talk to the DPW and look at it.
Yeah, I think we should. There's actually, there's a lot of foot traffic in that neighborhood, and as you mentioned, because the sidewalk, terminates, here. There's not, it does force everybody if they want to go up that way to cross there. So it's it makes it a little bit more difficult, and something Alexis and I were talking about too. We were walking around that area too. Is even something like this large shrub here on that corner really makes a blind turn to anybody that's walking or driving or taking that corner. It is impossible to see somebody walking in there. And on Valleywood there are no crosswalks. So if you're a kid on Valleywood that's walking either to the bus or to to VO, you're walking in the road and nobody can see you.
I mean, I could certainly talk to the DPW about striping that crosswalk as well, the one across Valley View. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Johnson Road is very wide as well, and I know that you can see we brought in the fog lines there. I think bikers would still be able to have room to get around it if we shrunk the crosswalk there and put little bump outs. So, but it is a very high volume, high traffic area for pedestrians and kids on bikes. As was mentioned, a lot of kids going either to school, going to Whipple Hill and Red Rock Farm, that direction, and also to the swim and tennis club. So it's it's very, very high traffic there.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing on those 3 things. We will, as we said, vote the crosswalk and rapid flashing beacon, probably as 2 different motions, but we're going to take up another rapid flashing beacon location a little bit later tonight. So thank you for being here. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
And we'll come back to that. Next, let's do maybe a license vote there, John, and then we have one more point from that design review committee one.
All right, I move that we renew the common victual license for Nourish Your Soul.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. This one?
Okay, yes. I move that we waive the 1-year waiting period for Adrian LaBeouf and reappoint him as a member of the Design Review Committee, term to expire December 31st, 2027.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I said 21st, I'm going to say 31st, sorry.
And then we have rapid flashing beacons, then we have outdoor dining, I promise. But let's just bang out these 2 rapid flashing beacons. We have it in the packet, a couple of locations, one of which is Johnson and Cox. Beth, do you want to provide additional context, or Matt?
Sure.
Because we have
I'll just
sort of
tee up
options for two.
And that can kind of give you the background. So you may recall that we had originally requested funding from capital planning for 3 RFBs, locations TBD. We did receive funding for 2 locations. So we have the location, the crosswalk with the proposed rapid flashing beacon at Johnson and Cox. I don't think we would feel comfortable installing the crosswalk without a rapid flashing beacon at that location. So that's one of the 2 locations to consider. And then prior to the Johnson and Cox location coming forward, there was an original kind of plan to put those 2 proposed RFBs, one at Highland and Walcott, and one at the Mystic School, and Matt can kind of go through those.
Okay.
So I think we have 3 locations for you to consider and funding for 2. And Matt, you have a grant that you've applied for, so I'll let you.
Yeah, so I was really hoping to have some more information, but the state had put out a grant in the fall for to provide towns with rapid flashing beacons. Now, I heard that there were 375 locations identified, so I don't know how competitive we're going to be, but it did require us to specify a location, a specific location, and I had included Cross at Johnson Road as a location for the town. Unfortunately, they're just saying in the spring now for when we would be notified.
Okay. So play this out, right? If we approve Johnson and Cox tonight with $40,000 from town meeting and Matt gets his grant, can we say throw that at Main Street?
No, I did ask. It's location specific.
So
We have to approve both at this point.
So I think you could.
No.
To approve 2 tonight.
You could approve one to, like,
Correct.
you could,
You
of
could
the
hold.
3, you could say, this is our highest priority, we're going to fund that. We're going to wait on the Johnson and Cox one until we know about the grant, and then not vote the second one that we have funding for, and maybe Johnson and Cox is your second priority that you would, of the 3, that's just,
okay.
and then if we get the grant, we can do the 3rd location that we don't fund. So that's just a thought in terms of how we might try to.
Any timing
Phase it
on
out.
the spring? I mean, it's only January 13th.
Well,
But
originally
is
they
that
told me
May?
December, so which is why I thought I would know.
Like an obvious
But no,
match.
they didn't see anything more than the spring.
Okay.
I think
I'm actually just go through the 2 other
Yes, please.
locations so we can just kind of understand where they are.
So the other locations were Main Street at the Mystic School, and those dots are not exactly where the crosswalk is. I think I have some pictures here of just there is an existing
is.
crosswalk, and when I made the request to town meeting, I was deliberate to specify locations that already had crosswalks so that we didn't come into this chicken or egg issue. But it does serve the Mystic School. It's on Main Street, and I think it would be an enhancement. And this was also a request. It was
It's all Bill's
requested to-
neighborhood.
I will say that as recently as tonight, I had to literally jump out of the way of a car when I was in this crosswalk and back onto the sidewalk because somebody swerved into the breakdown lane. It is ridiculous how many people speed and cut this corner sharply, and the number of kids who have to cross it every day, especially now in the dark with the sun setting as early as it does.
And the other location was Highland Ave at Walcott Road. And one of the rationales for this was, as part of previous appropriations, the other crosswalks on the section of Highland Ave between Mount Vernon Street and Forest Street were upgraded with rapid flashing beacons. This is the one that hasn't. It would provide some consistency to the area.
And also, there's no sidewalk on other sections
Yes.
of Highland Ave, so kids who
Yeah.
are coming down to go to the middle school or the high school, they have to cross at this location.
So both sidewalks exist currently.
Current existing crosswalks.
You may vote one rapid flashing beacon this evening and wait for the state. That's for us to decide. Okay. Are there other slides? I don't want to.
I think
I want to
that's
make
it.
sure you get through.
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Okay, select board. What do you want to do?
I have a question for Beth.
All right.
So Beth, I know we're past the end of the year with opera money, but I understand that there's some provision that if there's some turnbacks from some of the opera money, from the opera projects, we still have a window within which to spend that? I could be making that up, but I don't think I am.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure if it would be for a new project or if it was just for like,
Could you ask Casey? Just because maybe that could be a funding source for the third one.
Yeah, it would be for an incurred expense, so we'd have to pay
For an
expense.
incurred expense. Okay,
Yes.
there you go. All right.
That's my understanding. Stacy can clarify, but that's my
Okay.
understanding is we could apply that money to a bill we've incurred.
yeah.
So then we can reallocate the money for the. Just saying.
No,
Because it'd be great to do all three.
It's the right question.
So, I mean, like, long game on that, but if we have ARPA money that comes back and we've incurred an expense on
A playground.
the playground, we could push it there and
Yeah,
put that 20,000 too.
yeah.
So,
what- yeah,
or if,
That's what John was, I think, suggesting.
yeah.
Yep. Okay.
I like that plan.
Matt, what do you think the likelihood is? I mean, you said there's 300 plus applications in for however many. I mean,
I don't recall how many they're giving out, but it sort of was nowhere near 375. I mean, I tried to make as compelling a case as
Yeah.
possible, but I don't know who we're up against.
And your case was Johnson and Cox.
The case was Johnson and Cox. I provided the speed data because I think that's a compelling reason for the rapid flashing beacon. They did have some additional criteria, such as I think 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, which this location met, and a proximity to schools. So I put all of that in the application. We'll see what we get.
Okay, so, the benefit of waiting till whenever it is, when we meet every couple of weeks, right? Like, if that grant didn't get through, we could put this back on our agenda, that town meeting appropriation exists, and we didn't get the state funding for Johnson and Cox, we could make that appropriation for Johnson and Cox at that time. And so hold on to some money and appropriate one beacon this evening. And know we're going to do another one in the spring when we have a disposition, perhaps. Or maybe some ARPA money appears, and we should do some shifting.
What's the time frame on getting a beacon in?
Bob would know better than I would, but I would say at least 12 weeks to order it and get it installed. I know, the ones on Cross Street he ordered, I think, over the summer, and I don't think they're in yet. So there's a little bit of a
Order two.
backlog.
Yeah.
We could order two and just not install them until we know
That's
they're
true,
going. And then there's a bill.
and I guess another question too is when we're looking at the rapid flashing beacons, these ones are. Let's see the slide up there. I think it was in the other set, but I feel like for the Johnson and Cox, that having that speed limit flashing beacon is really beneficial there, as opposed to just the regular rapid flashing beacon. I don't know if that's.
I don't think that we could affix that to the rapid flashing beacon. I think it would be a potentially separate
Installation.
item. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So what does the board want to do? You want to do one tonight and hold on to one waiting? Do we want to wait on two? Seems like
Can I make a proposal?
that's what I'm
Asking
asking
for a
for.
proposal?
What do you do?
I mean, I know on foot this intersection as well as Mystic. I think Mystic has immediate kid traffic in front of it. It's
Daily.
also a much wider street. And so I would think that, as we're waiting on Matt's proposal on Johnson and Cox, that Mystic would be our top priority to do one, and then see what happens with Johnson and Cox and play it out from there.
I completely agree.
Because I have traversed Mystic and this one on foot and by car as well when families are leaving Mystic at the end of the day. And I think, it absolutely is getting a lot of traffic and it has low visibility.
Okay. Do you want to make that motion?
I move that we approve the purchase and installation of a rapid flashing beacon at the Mystic School on Main Street.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Do you want to make a motion to order a second beacon?
Yes.
TBD.
We can vote. I don't think we need a motion. We have the funding for both beacons, so I don't think we need a motion from you
Okay.
all. I do think on Johnson and Cox, if you want to preemptively approve the crosswalk and rapid flashing beacon, that if we got the grant, we would use that. And if we don't get the grant, we'll come back to you just to confirm that that's
That's still the
that's the
location?
second priority, right? Like if we're making a list of these three, Mystic School, Johnson Cox, and then Hamlet Wolcott. I'm sure we'll do another round of requests in the next capital cycle if we can't find funding elsewhere for the third beacon. So we would at least be able to move forward with Johnson Cox either way, with either the grant or the second
So should we just
capital.
move all three collectively just to be approved as recommended, funding to be determined?
We could do that.
There you go.
Okay, I'll have the motion then. That's
Second.
With the understanding that the priority is Mystic, which we just voted, Mystic School we just voted,
Yep.
Johnson and Cox, and then Hatton and Wolcott.
Right, with funding to be determined, which would be where Walcott comes in. That's the motion.
Okay.
Good?
Yeah.
Is there an official second?
I second, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the priority as laid out by the town
Yes.
manager.
All right. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Can I just ask, I'll hold my
No,
question,
no,
I'll ask
go
it
ahead.
after. Well, so the only
Hold
question
it,
I
yeah.
have is, when we did the two flashing beacons through Capitol, it was a little bit like under threshold, out of the norm to do it that way. So what, if going forward to town meeting, we wanted to say we want to do 2 to 3 more rapid flashing beacons, what would be our best avenue for doing something like that? Would it be a roads and sidewalks? Would it be?
So I think there was a little conversation
About a policy?
about that threshold.
We love conversations.
You know, I personally don't think there's any reason that we can't individually fund in the way that we've done it by a grouping of RFPs through the capital process. Like it's just like any other small project that's made up of smaller items, right? We've certainly funded RFPs as part of larger projects, like the bump out we did at Leonard Field, right? That was over $30,000 threshold because there were curb line extensions and all the work that was done, but there was an RFP as part of that. So I think we can continue to make that request, and I hope that capital would continue to support that. If that's not the case, there are other ways we can work it in, either through the annual road sidewalk allocation that we do. We can just clarify that we're, including RFBs, but we'd be asking for more money, right? Because we're already struggling to meet our road and sidewalk needs with that annual allocation. So I think that's something to consider for the next cycle, but I don't see there's any reason we can't continue to do it the way we did last year. And there's certainly more than enough locations that were identified as part of the Transportation Master Plan a few years ago to continue funding projects.
When we established TTAC a few years ago, probably a conversation for another agenda, whether we bring that back or not. We had funded, I think, 50 grand or so as a line item in the budget for TTAC, and so a lot of this stuff was handled by them on a yearly basis, right? So, and I think Capital felt good about that wasn't kind of pulling money from the stabilization funds for kind of smaller items. So anyway, maybe it's a line item that we look as we're reviewing the budget this year too.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table. There's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. Next up, outdoor dining. So I know there's some people here that have contacted us. I'm not going to call you up just yet, but some of you had sent us emails. Every email that I received this weekend, the board has shared. Follow-up emails that came in today, the board has shared. The Chamber of Commerce sent some feedback via their chair. That has been shared with the board. So just know that if you sent me an email or you sent the town manager's office an email, it got to everybody. We discussed in our meeting in December looking at different dates for outdoor dining. I think we have, when we will ask for public comment, I promise, I think we have in front of us as a select board the dates for outdoor dining, the fee for outdoor dining, does it stay the same, does it change, and the footprint. So for a restaurant, we also had in our packet a few other towns' policies on outdoor dining where I think Belmont and also Boston, the footprint is the parking spaces immediately in front of your business. So I think that's what we have in front of us. If anyone from the public wants to come up and give 2 minutes of public comment and then go back and take your seat, I'd invite you forward. You can bring up chairs if you want to, but if you're here to give public comment, please approach the table. We're happy to hear it. And if not, we'll just debate, but this is your chance. Okay, then
What's up for discussion?
the dates, the fee, and the setup, the footprint of outdoor dining to run concurrent with the sort of frontage on the street.
So is there talk about taking months away?
I think he's,
So why don't you come to the table? So that would be, dates would be weeks, it could be months, but it would be establishing the start and end dates.
From what I remember last year, in the Richard Mucci era, they took away 2.5 months already. They took that away without giving us an abatement on the parking spaces as well, which I think was wrong. I don't know what the dates you guys are thinking about, or
I don't either.
yeah.
You'll find out.
So I talked to Mr. Frederioli over here, and we decided that what we think would be good dates, and that would be May 1st to October 1st. What's that?
May 1st to October, to November 1st.
To November 1st. That's what we were discussing outside. I want to also bring up that we suffered last season with the heat wave. We hardly had anybody out the whole summer, outdoor dining. You know, that's the act of God. We can't do anything about that. But what happened was it got really nice when everybody went back to school, and we had to close down on October 15th. Right up to November 15th, it got really nice. So we could have made up some lost profit. What I also want to bring up is everyone thinks the restaurant business is making a lot of money. We're making 5 cents on the dollar, if you can believe it. And if you're lucky, you're making 10 cents on the dollar. Those are the good restaurants. To make up for this money, this outdoor dining helps. If you're going to shorten the months for the outdoor dining, it doesn't, and we still have to pay that ungodly fee for the parking spaces, it doesn't make sense as a business aspect to keep it going. I know there's, people complaining about parking spaces and whatnot. I think there's a lot of people, some that might even be here tonight, that didn't even know that we were paying for the parking spaces. And a lot of people don't know that we're the only businesses in town that generate monies for the town of Winchester in meals tax, which came about in 2013. And that was newfound money. And there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands that the town is making on meals tax with restaurants, as they're not doing with these other businesses. The other businesses that are complaining about, well, we're not doing a business because we have no parking. Well, us restaurateurs have the same parking issue. We don't have parking either. For years, I've been mentioning that the parking situation could be handled, and it should have been handled when the MBTA project was in play. To go all the way down, take all the brush all the way down at the end of Aberjona towards Ginn Road, towards Ginfield, and make spaces all the way down there. You'd probably get 200 more cars in there.
Should have been in our meeting earlier this evening. We were talking about that very parking lot.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I've been saying it for years and years and years, and and it came on deaf ears.
so I do think that as we talk about the dates and the season, whether it's May 1st, or we'll see. I don't know where this board is. I do think if we're going to reduce the number of weeks, I think we need to discuss as a board reducing the fee as well, what that what that means. If we do a per week calculation, I think they have to go hand in hand. So just know that. We're not looking, at least I'm not suggesting that we shrink the season without giving some relief for what you're paying
Just
for that
when
fee.
you're talking, just make sure you talk about how we shortened it last year for 2.5 months.
Absolutely.
2.5 months and still paid the fee, $3,000, you know. I'd like to keep it going. The longer we keep it going, the more chance of making a profit so that we can pay that fee, believe it or not. When I say a nickel on a dollar, I mean it, with all the maintenance issues and everything else. I mean, I spent at least $100,000 in maintenance issues this year, you know, so.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure the Fratiolis have too, with their place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate it.
thank you.
Sure. So shall we start with dates? And then we can look at the fee. And then if we want to make any change to the policy around sort of like the frontage, but where do people think on dates? We have a proposal, sounds like from 2 restaurateurs, of May 1st to November 1st. November 1st is a Saturday. Would you like to come on up? Sure.
So, as Jimmy mentioned, Philip Frontaroli, from Lucia, 21 Old Village Drive, Precinct 6. You know, we did compromise last year. There was a significant cut to the length of the season. In 2022, it was 260 days, and in 2023 and 2024, it was 183 days. The cut to Memorial Day to the Spirit Weekend, as proposed by the Chamber of Commerce, would be 113 days. The reason I bring this up is because, as Jimmy said, in the middle of the summer, it's almost too hot to sit out there. So we really rely on those shoulder times of year of the season. May, as I mentioned last time when I spoke, May with Mother's Day and Inca Fair is really important, and in October is good weather for sitting outside. The reason I think it's important to sort of lock this in is because now in year 5 of outdoor dining, we have to replace all the tables and chairs that we bought 5 years ago, where we got a complaint from the Handicap Commission that our patio is not handicapped accessible. So we're looking at very expensive ways to do that. There's a rodent issue in the building that's next to us that would prevent us from doing something cheap to deck it over. We need something that would be metallic and not cheap. So that's one issue. The other issue is, as we said, we want every business needs dependability and to know what they can expect to do. So if we're going to invest going forward, and I think this is ultimately a very popular thing in town amongst the residents and voters, we just need to make sure that we can make it work for us and we can reinvest and continue to make the town a place that people want to come.
Thank you.
Can I ask him just 1 or 2 questions?
Sure.
Because you just brought up a couple of things. You said it got shortened from one year to the next. You had 0 days of outdoor dining in 2019, correct? Mm-hmm. You're still running a profitable business in 2019, correct?
Yeah, but since then...
You're making more profit.
Well, inflation has gone out of control, and you know, restaurants are closing all the time. Outdoor dining saves some restaurants from being closed, but
yeah,
you know, ultimately, if there's one good thing that came out of the COVID pandemic, it was people really like outdoor dining. I mean, look at Europe.
I like it too, and I wanted to stick around. I just want to make sure that, you know, there are other businesses that are not getting the benefit of outdoor dining. It's really unique to the restaurants, and yeah, it brings more people who might go into those businesses too, but you know, they have concerns that have to be respected. And this is something which I think we're all benefiting from, but it's been a privilege and it's not necessarily a right. And I think it's a little...
I mean, from dating back 5 years, sitting at this table, we've always said that we want something sustainable that's going to work for everybody. And particularly in those shoulder times, you know, people come for lunch and then we'll walk around downtown and go to a store. I don't know if you can separate the benefits from, you know, just the sales tax and everything else that come to a restaurant to the jobs created at other places downtown. And I think, you know, we want to work hand in glove. Like I said, it might not be sustainable for restaurants if we're condensed just to the summer, like the hottest months of the summer.
Sure. If I could just make a recommendation, personally, I think the best thing that the businesses in this town could do with this issue is not bring it to the select board, because we're going to have to vote on something based upon whatever we think tonight. and you might not like it. But we do have a Chamber of Commerce, which is really good at bringing together all the businesses and working together. I mean, that's its mission. And whatever's going to happen in the future, just consider maybe coming together with your fellow business people in town, working with the Chamber of Commerce, and coming up with some sort of consensus that you bring to us. Because if you did that, you'd all get what you wanted. But, as you come here with two different sides of the coin, we're going to have to split the baby somewhere. And it might not be the way you like it. So
sure,
that's just a suggestion for the future.
But it's a zero-sum game at the end of the day. The Chamber of Commerce is made up by way more retail locations than restaurants, and I'm sure their businesses have evolved over the years. That the restaurants, we're a little bit immune from Amazon and things like that. I think the businesses that rely on parking will always complain about parking.
All the more reason to work it out amongst yourselves.
But it's just not a fair fight because there's 10 to 1 retailers to restaurants. So,
Can I ask a little quick question? Please.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
Phil,
John.
this could be Jim too, but May, June, or September, October, which ones are better for you? Or are they about equal?
September, October. I mean, honestly, if it was just being out there for June, July, and August, we probably wouldn't do it.
No, but I'm just saying is May and June, because forget about
Yeah.
July and August, because I'm saying they're hot, right?
Yeah.
So, or is the fall better for you? Are they equal?
I'd say May and June is a little bit lesser than the fall, but I mean, it's really
Pretty close? Okay, that's all I just...
ultimately, like, everybody comes back to town September 1st, so the town comes back alive. So, people start to head out in the middle of June. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
Mother's Day for us is like the Alamo. That's the most important day for us to be outside.
Okay.
I don't even want to know what that visual of the Alamo means for you, but okay, Mike and then Anthea.
The other thing, too, I think to be aware of, just anecdotally and, looking around the community with the outdoor dining is it's very rare, even though we've increased capacity for the restaurants, that the inside of the restaurant is full as well as the outdoor side, right? So a lot of people that normally would be going to your restaurant for lunch, they use the outdoor option because they prefer it, but it doesn't mean that it's also full. So it's not just your capacity and revenue has increased substantially every day, right?
Yes and no. I mean, we could do studies on it, but I think if it's a nice day outside and somebody was planning to, eat at home, they could decide they'd rather go downtown and eat outside in a patio. I mean, I think to some extent, not every seat is full when we're seating outside, but I think people decide they want to have lunch outside or dinner outside, and we'll go out for that. I mean, I don't know. I don't have numbers on that, but I've made that decision, and I know as a father of 4 kids, we tend to want to sit outside because my kids will destroy any dining room that they happen to be in.
So we got Alamo analogies. We can just. All right, Anthea, do the question.
Just trying to paint a picture.
Point of clarification.
You're painting a picture.
I'm with you on that, right? You want my kids sitting outside? They're loud. The suggestion that you were bringing forward was May 1st to November 1st. Is that accurate? We have a new calendar. And Michelle pointed out November 1st.
I think we just want to lock something in for a few years so that we can plan and see if it's worth the investment. I mean, we're between the decking and all new tables and chairs. This is many tens of thousands of dollars we're looking at, and if it's going to take another haircut this year and then next year, it just might not even be worth it.
Yep.
And I know last year we I think, had said we'll start at the end of April, and there was some pushback, and we actually shifted that a bit earlier.
Yep.
Is that kind of...
We've resolved that issue.
Sorted out? Okay.
But Boston has May 1st, November 1st. I think that's, a good model.
I mean, it seems fairly consistent with what we've done previously. Maybe last year we shortened it a bit, but in the first few years it was April 1st, November 1st, November 15th.
First year was actually March 15th because
March 15th,
it was like a St. Patrick's Day. The Italian restaurant didn't benefit from it.
Sorry.
We all need our days.
Okay, I was just asking just to get my dates straight on that. Thank
So
you.
that is, I just was doing the math, that is 83, 184 days, as you said. I think if the select board wants to look at November 1st, I think we ought to look at November 2nd, get you through the Sunday, right? Not just a Saturday.
You know, it could be like one of those election day things, like the first Tuesday after the second, or
Yeah.
whatever that rule is.
First weekend in May to the first,
Yeah.
the first Monday in November. But I don't want to put words in the, but if we do go sort of day to day in this season, I just want to suggest if we're going to go as far out as November 1st, we should probably go out as far as November 2nd.
Third.
And then expect, right, November 3rd to break things down. So I just want to point that out. I wouldn't expect a restaurant to be serving on a Saturday night and then roped off on a Sunday afternoon. So, but we haven't decided necessarily as a board what we want to do. But now is our time to think about dates, then I want to go back and think about the fee. Bill, Mike, John,
On the fee or dates?
dates, let's do dates first.
I mean, I'm in favor of early May to early November, if that's,
Okay?
Can a couple of merchants speak?
Of course, everybody was invited to come. Please come to the table and then tell us your name and who you represent, by all means.
First, I'm Darren Mutton. I own Ketchup Hall and Star in the center. And first, I'm all for the restaurants having outdoor dining, but I'm also all for other businesses in town who are struggling as much as the restaurants have. And my profit margins are real low also. Trust me, I lost money last year. I lost some money the year before. I've been in town 27 years, and I've never complained, and I've always gone on along with what's best for the center. And I think what's best for the center is a compromise by both. And when you just made a gentleman's statement about the select board shouldn't be involved, I agree. I head up the Belmont Business Merchants Association, I'm the president, and I went to the select board, and the select board says, you take control, you get the restaurants and the merchants together, and you come up with an agreeable plan. And it worked last year. I took control of it, and I got the merchants and the restaurants sitting in a room together, and we came up with a plan. It was a shorter season, it was less spaces, but the merchants were happy, and the restaurants were happy. And everybody walked away, and we presented, I made a presentation to the select board, and the select board agreed upon and voted on it, and they didn't have to get into the particulars and all that, because we voted on it as a downtown, not as individuals, and you guys have to kind of get through it. I just feel it's a long time, November. I sit in my store sometimes, and I really see First House Pub more than anything. He does block my view of the street, and I don't complain. I'm a good neighbor. But I see probably about 60% of the time, there's nobody sitting in the seats. And it's frustrating because I get calls from customers saying there's no parking. Parking is a premium. As you said, Amazon is taking businesses away from us every day, and we're fighting to retain the consumers. Now, the question is, what direction does Winchester want to go? Does Winchester want to become strictly a restaurant downtown, or does Winchester want to offer a nice mix of merchants who sell product, restaurants, services, and stuff like that? And if we continually not respect merchants, then we're going to go to all restaurants downtown. And I won't survive. The clothing stores won't survive. Artist jewelry store won't survive. A lot of people won't survive because parking is at a premium. I don't want to frustrate my customers in town. Winchester's king to me. This town is very important to me. And I do get a lot of calls about parking. It's always been an issue in this town. Premium is a parking. We shortened the season in Belmont. We went from Mother's Day, which all the restaurants wanted because it's critical, and we ended September 15th. And there wasn't a complaint from a restaurant. And we only allowed restaurants who have service outside. It's full-service restaurants that get outdoor dining. And it was agreed upon because we have to respect both sides of the voice. And I respect restaurants more than anything because I eat in all these restaurants in town. And I enjoy going outside as much as everything else, but I also enjoy my customers coming into my stores and all the other businesses. So I hope you guys just take a look at it. Going into November, to me, I think is ridiculous. I do 60% of my profit from October to December. I have 3 months to make my year's usage. And to take that away from me is very difficult. So October, to me, is a joke, having outdoor dining. I know the weather may be good, but it may be bad. It's uncertain. We live in New England. Who knows what the weather's going to be? So it's just a tough call for that period of time. Last year I sat there. It was a very hot summer, and they were right. I didn't see anybody eating outside. And even Jim at First House Pub, who I talk all the time, who I respect, said it was a tough year for outdoor dining. It was just too hot, too many bad days and it wasn't enough customers coming outside. So, but we got to respect every business in Winchester Center. That's not a few. Outdoor dining wasn't here 5 years ago, as you said it. Outdoor dining is a privilege to have, but also having a good mix of retailers in Winchester Center is also a privilege. This town is lucky to have the diversity it has. I'm telling you, I had a business in Belmont, I had a business in Lexington also, and I think Winchester has a great mix of stores in this town, and I hope that the town realizes it's not easy for the merchants. You've had some new stores open up, and we have to respect all businesses. And restaurants are as critical as anything. And I do pay a sales tax to the state, and the state does give local aid back to the town. It's not like we don't contribute anything. We do. And we do contribute by bringing people from other towns into our retail businesses because we offer great product and services. So just give you my 2 cents on it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Mara McFarland. I own Frozen Hoagies. My concern, I think, more is the footprint. Like, the 7 months that you want the outdoor dining, I haven't been doing the outdoor dining. Maybe I should. But that's my season, is the summer. That's when all the people come to my store. So it's just like everyone has their own issues with the parking, the footprint, because now there's more restaurants open next to me.
Yep.
So that's going to be our whole side of the street. And Darren and I both, we're next door to each other. We get our own supplies and we unload our cars in front of the stores. So it's like, how do you even get through, walking it? The first year, First House Pub was all the way up in front of my store. They've cut it back, which is good. And I have nothing against Jim. But it was my first year in business in Winchester, and I was blocked completely by the restaurants. So I think, it's not fair that there's not even a spot where you can see our stores. And maybe I will put in for outdoor dining this year. That's my thought.
So
It's the bank, then First House, then Catch a Falling Star,
And then me.
and then you,
And
then
you.
ramen.
And then ramen.
And then Starbucks.
And then Starbucks.
And then Starbucks.
Artie, are you in there too somewhere?
No, he's up the
He's
other
at the
end.
Rotary.
So it's possible, like, if all of you applied for outdoor dining, there's
no
no
room.
parking left on, that's, okay.
That's my
Also,
concern.
You block the front of my own store. It's not right. A restaurant doesn't have the right to block my store. I need good street access. I need consumers to see my storefront. And when a restaurant's blocking my store, I don't think that's fair.
I
So
100% agree with that.
So I think we need to
They cut back. They did
that
after the first.
But I think that's the next thing too, is the footprint. We could say that it has to be kind of, and if it cheats into the space by a foot, then do we just sort of temporarily restripe a space? But I think we need to talk about the footprint as well. So, but first, let's maybe settle on dates, then let's settle on storefronts, and then let's think about if the fee, if we're shrinking the season, last year it was April 15th, there's a proposal for May 1st, or it's Mother's Day, there's an end date that we have to decide. But if we're going to shrink some weeks, I think we should also be reducing the fee. And yes, Mr. Covino?
Yeah, I was thinking, just to help out, maybe that's a landlord's issue, maybe talk to the guy that owns the building about the frontage.
You mean, having the restaurants? This is the amount of spaces the town allows.
Yeah.
This takes what he can allow. I think he takes 3 spaces, and unfortunately, the third space is in front of my store.
Well, then maybe you shouldn't get 3 spaces.
That's what we're going to try to discuss.
That's something to
Yeah, that's
consider.
a-
I mean, if it-
That would be great.
Yep. All right, so Mike just left the room. Dates. Bill?
I understand.
Just like, I'm going to keep back to my same
Okay.
questions.
Mother's Day makes sense to me, allowing outdoor dining to be up and running by then. Going to November makes less sense to me. I feel like I can think of an October where it snowed for every October where I was wearing shorts. And that's really getting into a pretty retail heavy time of year. So going all the way to November 1st, I'm not so comfortable with. That's also like more than half the year for something which I, again, think is still fairly new and more of a privilege. So,
Do you have a day in mind?
looking at the calendar, like if we said, taking Phil's advice, like the weekend before Mother's Day until the weekend after Labor Day. Isn't Labor Day? No, Labor Day is in early September.
You could do Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Yeah.
Labor Day's the first this year.
The last weekend in September.
So just, we want to make sure we start and stop it on a weekday so that they can, because that's the day they can start setting up.
The Monday before Mother's Day,
When is that? What date is that?
The 5th,
Like,
May
you
5th.
would do it like the 5th to 6th. I mean, if I remember last year, it'd be like the 5th to 6th. I mean,
Correct.
it would start.
May 5th or 6th, yes.
No, we
So-
started up school vacation
Last year it was
Here's the
April.
29th.
Yeah, so if we're gonna keep talking and shifting and thinking of like specific dates, I mean, Mother's Day is always
The second Sunday in May.
Sunday in May. So I think it may make more sense so that we're not annually revisiting this conversation, that we say it is the Monday before the first Monday in May or something like that, where we're able to, instead of, coming back in 2026 and looking at the calendar and having the discussion, but saying it's
The Thursday before Mother's Day.
May 1st or the Monday before Mother's Day, they're able to take the space for setup or whatever it is, or, if that's feasible for setup or if a slightly longer period is needed, but that we can have sort of things like you mentioned, through Indigenous Peoples' Day, that gives us till almost mid-October, most of the time. And then it
that's a
sort of
long
creates dates without needing
I think they should
check
allow, I mean,
calendar.
I'm not against going through September, because September could be a nice month. And the restaurants could, I notice when people come back into town, the restaurants do get some capacity through September.
Well, and I think to be, it's true, we had March, we had April 16th last year, we have Halloween. I think if we're going to, as a board, sort of, I understand Mr. Federelli's perspective. It'd be nice to know what we're going to do for the next 3 years. I agree. But I'm not sure we can land there tonight. But if we're going to say we're going to shrink it by 2 weeks on this side and 2 weeks on that side, it feels incremental. It's not 6 full months, but it's not 4 months either, right? Right now it's 6 months as proposed. Just June to Labor Day is 4 months. That's a pretty dramatic shift. But if we said take 2 weeks off the front and 2 weeks off the back, that's a month. But it maybe it gets us to where we're going to land in the middle. So I just think incremental, it may not satisfy, or it doesn't still not feel painful for restaurants, but I think it's responsive and we can see how it goes. I think that's my wish anyway. And Indigenous Peoples' Day is a long weekend, right? Monday is, I think it's still a no school day in this town. They get you through the middle of October, and the second Sunday is Mother's Day. So the week before Mother's Day to maybe the Wednesday after Indigenous Peoples' Day.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, that first Wednesday in May, Wednesday after Indigenous Persons Day.
Yes.
Can you put a date to that?
We will.
I don't know what Mother's Day is.
May 7 to October 15.
So what you could always say is the first Wednesday in May and the third
Wednesday.
The
Third Wednesday in October.
Is that sufficient setup time to be seating people at Mother's Day?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Wednesday. I mean, we can, if you need Tuesday, good point.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the,
it was October 15th last year, so that would be the same end date, and then, so just be pushing it back. I mean, I'll live with that for sure.
Yeah.
I can lock it in for 3 years.
So is that?
No, because next year we're going to have a lot more parking when the MBTA is done with their project, and
That's
we'll
true.
And not for nothing though, like if you
We'll have a new
adopted
select board next year. Bill, we can't commit for 3 years.
What's the end?
40% new.
October 15.
And if you do something with the size of the build-outs, you're already going from 9 or 10 spots to, from 12 down to 9 or 10.
Perhaps. Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's right.
I just have one question, like an example you guys were mentioning. In my block, I'm the only real retailer in the block. So per se, what happens if the new place comes to you and they want to have outdoor dining, and then first house comes, there's no parking in my block. How does the select board look at that? How can you approve to take a whole block away from me for parking in front of my business, in front of Hoagie's, and allow us to be successful? And that's the real issue I have. I mean, it's like I said, there's less retailers in town than ever. My block is more difficult than any because I have restaurants all around me. And if you take all that away from me, it's really going to be a very difficult time for me to survive. And I hope you guys just take a look at that and understand that some spaces there's not a restaurant in it, but a block like Maine where there's Karma, there's New Karma, the whole thing is all restaurants. You could take every parking space away from me, and it'll be more difficult.
Yep.
So I hope that something has to be done by that also. And if another restaurant opens up across the street, another opens up over here, because more merchants are going out. Next thing you know, it's just going to be one outdoor. It's going to be like Moody Street, and look how poor Moody Street is. To me, Moody Street, it's all restaurants and no retail in it. It's just not a great street. So I hope the vision is there to understand the decisions we make and how we make it for all people involved. So that's all I have to say.
I think you got to talk to your landlord as well.
Oh, my landlord rents it to me.
Right.
I can't tell any landlord. You're a landlord, you can do it, but my landlord rents it to the highest bidder, and that's the nature of the beast. And I can't tell them not to.
I'm going to quickly do some math. All right, so
But I think also when we first did this, and I forget what year, but we really did look at. We took an inventory of the total amount of spaces and the total amount of spaces that we were taking up with outdoor dining. So, Darren's point, we may have to shrink the footprint, if there are more requests in order to solve that problem. So that might be what happens down the road, right? So, and everybody will have to be agreeable to that because there's limited space.
Yep.
So,
When you say that, you're saying take away parking spaces?
Yeah, I think we'll have to, if we get more requests, we can't have no parking on one whole side of a street. It's just not tenable. And I don't think the residents want that, even if we did decide to do that. So the more requests that we get in, we'll have to evaluate how to find that balance, right?
Yep.
Not right now, but at some
So
point.
right now, we said, a restaurant's allowed to use up to 3 contiguous spaces. That's what the current policy says. We need to maybe say up to 3 contiguous spaces that doesn't extend beyond their footprint.
Yeah.
I think we need to.
Granted.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's how I did it in Belmont.
Yep.
If 2 spaces all they have in the storefront, in the state of Massachusetts also, I read the laws, that you only could serve alcohol outside if you could see the parking spaces and the tables in front of your restaurant. If you can't see it directly in front of your restaurant, the state of Massachusetts really prohibits serving alcohol outside the spectrum of the windows of where the restaurant is. So there's something to throw in. But if they could just stay within their capacity and not override onto my storefront, that's a compromise.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Then
I wish Matt was still here.
I have math as well, but on fees. We'll get to that.
So I've said before, and I'm looking at a Google image or Apple image of the street. Can we, we're going to have outdoor dining. Can we look at restriping some of the spots so that they are shorter and make them compact
We can,
car
but I don't
spaces?
think we're going to get like on that main streets, the side where First House is and Frozen Hoagies, we're not going to get a full additional space on that side by restriping it. So, we can look at that and we might be able to get a space here or there. But
Yeah, I guess it's not even like to get those spaces, but if we, say you have 2 spaces here and then look at how that extends down the street,
But you have to remember we have a crosswalk at Starbucks and we have a crosswalk at Eastern Bank,
so it's
right?
not
So
gonna-
you're not going to, in between those crosswalks, you're not going to get a full space fit in there.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it again, and that's like, this picture has
That's a
all
good
these
question.
SUVs parked and like 4 feet in between each of them.
All right. So I think we have some
I
footprint.
think we should evaluate that. So
I think we
this comes
should.
up a lot. It is. I think
we
it's
should.
hard. There is typically when I park 4 to 5 feet behind my car,
Well,
and it's.
I saw somebody today in front of your store, Frozen Hoagies, fitting in between 2 cars that were straddling space. Like they were, so there was literally a person was like fitting into a space that was the in-between space.
That happens all the time.
But there was room for the car. So I think to your point and to Mike's point, I think, Beth, the crosswalks are the crosswalks. We have to be safe at CVS. We have to be safe at the bank. But when someone can get, if it's striped for 5 and I'm watching a 6th car comfortably parallel park this afternoon, then maybe it can fit 6 spaces. So I think we should look at that. And so I think we have the footprint. And then I did the math. Since we just reduced it by roughly like 29 days, it's $200. You were paying roughly $650 a day, where you were paying about $550 a day with a longer season. So I think it'd be reasonable to reduce that fee. Right now it's $1,000 for the season per spot. I think we take $200 off the application, because that's what the
200 off the 3,000?
no, so 200 off per space. So 600 off the 3,000. If I did my math right, it goes to 153 days, $1,000 a space.
1,500 for the 3, 500 a spot.
So 800 a spot instead of 1,000 a spot,
That makes sense.
because and that's just straight up math, but it's 195. So if you round it up to $200, so reduce the application fee.
Question to go back to the frontage issue.
Yes.
Situation where, let's say they have 100 feet in front of their restaurant, that is 2.5 parking spaces. Do they get 2.5 parking spaces? Or are we going to say you get 2?
I think they get 2.
So it's the full.
It's the
full
space.
spaces
That's
only.
right.
And in the event that your frontage gives you a fraction of a third space or whatever it might be, you don't get that. It's just whatever full spaces are in front of your establishment.
I think that's right.
That makes sense.
So how do you want to, so this is in section 3B of the existing language. We need to give some revised language, right? So it says, will be allowed to use up to 3 contiguous parking spaces so long as they are
Contiguous or coterminous with the footprint of their building. Give me the right verb, adjective. Coterminous with the footprint of the building?
No.
No, that's not the word.
Contiguous and complete.
Do not extend beyond the frontage.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Do not extend beyond the front of the building.
I mean, they can take clear.
And I think,
See, thank you. I think I have the right word, but yes.
unless otherwise approved by the board.
Unless otherwise approved. If there's a half a space and there's no concern, or you work with your retail partner, I suppose we could say 2.5 spaces, you could get 3, but we're not going to approve it out of hand.
That block is going to be tough because somebody's going to have to parallel park between, if the wrong place has a build-up, they're going to have to.
Yeah, they're building a cul-de-sac down by my place too, along the road. I went to the meeting on that. I don't know if that's going to take away half the space or whatever.
Yep.
So, I mean,
I think we'll have to see.
is that right?
Well, I think it's fair to have it be lined up with your business, and I think we need to see what that looks like. And if there's a half space, some strange math we have to do, we have to sort of handle it on a case by case. So.
Yeah.
Not to throw fire into not to throw fuel into the fire. In Belmont, part of the compromise is that the restaurants were going to have to pay a charge